Hi, welcome back to Finca del Cielo. Well, this week marks our 2-year anniversary of buying the finca. So I thought it would be a good time to reflect on how we ended up here. Does life here match the expectations? Is it what we thought it would be? And what advice we'd give to anybody that's looking to make a major change in their life like we have. So, our expectations. Well, we started this journey nearly 3.5 years ago when we made the decision that we wanted to move and that we were going to follow the dream and have a little farm. We did look at properties around the UK and Ireland initially, but there was nothing that would fit into our budget. So we started looking further afield and found that there were an enormous number of properties in Spain that would kind of fit within our budget and give us what we were looking for, which really was a bit of space, the ability to drop out of society a little bit. So in terms of our expectations, we were hoping that we'd get a property with a little bit of room and to have, possibly a couple of acres. What we've actually ended up with is quite different. We never for a minute imagined that we'd end up with a fruit farm with 90 odd trees. Here we only have half an acre, and the house is tiny, but we do have enough room for visitors, so that's quite good. But it's turned out to be perfect. These properties that we were looking at on the internet when we were back in the UK, when we got here we started having a look at some of them and soon discovered that we would probably be living like mountain goats. And the phrase "there's rural and then there's really rural" came into effect. So some of these properties you stood there and you thought, gosh, what if one of us had an accident or got ill? We're not 20 anymore, we are getting on a little bit, so there are things that you have to think about. And at the time we were still drinking milk, so houses had to pass the pint of milk test. Could we go and get a pint of milk and be back in under an hour? And there were quite a few properties that failed that test. So for me that was a bit of a deal breaker, because the ability to be able to go and get supplies or have something relatively near at hand were quite important. So this place, although the land is a little bit smaller than we planned and the house is a little bit smaller than we planned, we're only 1 kilometre from the local village. So when we're out here at the finca, we might as well be a million miles away, but we know that 5 minutes in the car or just over 10 minutes walking, there is civilization, I suppose you could call it. We have a little shop and things that we need, we can get there. So we haven't ended up with what we thought we would, but we're absolutely delighted with it. It's absolutely perfect for us. And in some ways I'm quite glad that we haven't got more than half an acre. It is a lot of work. It would be nice to have a little bit more room for growing vegetables. We've cleared one end, but that would start to mean pulling up trees, and that's not something that either of us are really keen on. So we've got a compromise. We grow some veg and we buy some veg, and it absolutely works for us. We are living off-grid, obviously. We have solar power, we have wind turbine. We only have irrigation water here, but we do manage to turn that into drinkable water. So I think we've ended up with a compromise where we are having a lighter touch on the planet. We are living a very quiet and peaceful life, but we don't feel like we're totally cut off. So we're happy with what we've ended up with. In terms of research before we came here, and this is really important if you're looking to move to any other country, is checking on things like residency. What are the requirements, what do I need to do to be able to buy there, to be able to live there. Make sure that you've looked up things like taxes that you would buy on the property. Here in Spain they can add 12 to 15% to your purchase price. And be realistic with your money. Be realistic about whether you're going to have to be able to find a job. What is the job situation? Here in Spain there are very few jobs going. Luckily I'm able to teach a couple of days online, and that kind of covers our main outgoings really. I would recommend anybody looking to do this that you do have a little bit of money behind you. There are obviously things that you need in order to live this lifestyle. So for us it was things like the cost of the new solar system and the wind turbine, and we needed a chainsaw, and there are other ways of doing it, but again, it's finding that balance in life where life isn't just so tough that you're going down to the river with a bucket to get some water. So I think there's a balance to be had. The local community here has been amazing. We've been welcomed with open arms. I really wasn't expecting that. You hear a lot of expats that come here and they don't learn Spanish, and they create a sort of mini England in the sun, and we never wanted to be part of that group of expats. We actually did want to join in the local community, and so learning Spanish, which has been quite a challenge at our age, learning Spanish has been difficult but enjoyable, and the locals here, even when our Spanish is really bad, they're just so happy that we are giving it a really good go. And in fact the local community are probably amongst the very small number of people that actually see us as normal. We're living on the land, we're growing our own vegetables, we still have to go to work, we're driving around in a 36-year-old car. They don't see us like they do some of the English here that have come over with pots of money at the point of retirement and living the life of Riley. So they really have taken us to their hearts, and that's been amazing. So how have we changed? This place definitely has changed us. I think we have become much calmer. Before we left the UK, I was mentally and physically burnt out. I had nothing left. Now, nothing needs to be perfect. Nothing needs to be done in a hurry. When there's work to be done, we get on and do it, but we do actually have more downtime than I ever envisaged we would have. I love having the chickens. I find them hilarious. We've now got 2 dogs, both asleep down here by my feet. And life is just really relaxed, and what it's done for us is given us space to breathe. In fact, we're not so good now at peopling. When we go into the village, when the cafe is open, we sometimes stop and have a coffee, and it's lovely to have a chat with the locals. But after about an hour, you can see it in our faces, we're both ready to go, to come back to our little haven. And similarly, it's nice having visitors, but after about 3 days, we're kind of like, yeah, are you going yet? So we have got used to just not talking all the time, and it's lovely. So I think mentally and physically we're in better shape than we ever have been. Possibly with the exception of Roger, his asthma, he's struggling a little bit with that here. We are 500 metres up. It does get quite dusty. There's obviously, with 90 fruit trees this time of year as well, the pollen, the blossom is starting to come out. So he's a little bit wheezy at the moment, but the nice thing about here is if he gets a day where he's struggling a bit, he can kick back and relax and put his feet up, and that's wonderful. It's just listening to your body and listening to your mind and doing what they're telling you that they need. So how have we learnt things? I mean, we didn't come over here knowing how to put a solar system in, how to grow vegetables. These are things that we've learnt along the way. Some of it's been trial and error. YouTube has been incredibly useful. So it's just sitting back and thinking, here's the problem, what could various solutions be? So then you might try one and no, that doesn't work, so then we'll try something else. I think it's just being not afraid to roll your sleeves up and have a go. And it's amazing when you have time and you've got space to think, the solutions that you can come up with are quite remarkable. So in terms of what's been difficult for us, probably the biggest challenge has been learning Spanish. For one, at school I was never great with foreign languages, but here it feels like, we do have a reason to learn. Having the pandemic over the last year has kind of stopped us in our tracks a little bit, because for us the weekly visit to the cafe and chatting to the locals, you learn more in that hour than you did the rest of the week on Duolingo. But we keep at it. We do a little bit of Spanish every single day. We do our lessons, and we are getting better at making ourselves understood, and generally people can understand what we're getting at, and they're incredibly patient with us. So I suppose, what advice would I give somebody who wanted to do this? Do your research, have a little bit of money behind you, be realistic about what you're going to get for your money, be realistic about how much life is going to cost. You can't spend every penny that you own on buying the house and leaving nothing in reserve. There are people that do it. I take my hats off to them, but I would just feel a little uncomfortable if there was nothing at all in the bank. So make sure you know things like residency requirements, taxation, what you need to do to be able to stay in your country of choice. And the other thing as well, if you're looking at Spain in particular, there are a lot of these cortijos for sale. Very, very few of them are actually legal properties that you can live in. We were lucky when we found this one. It was going through the paperwork to be made legal, which meant that we could be on the padron, which meant that we could open a bank account and pay our taxes and do all the things that we needed to do. A lot of these fincas, the houses on them are literally weekend or holiday homes. So they don't actually have a residential address that you can use as a registered address to say this is where I live. That's a very important question to ask if you happen to be looking at these. But you know, always make sure that you have a good solicitor. Find a bilingual solicitor if you're moving to another country. Even if you are familiar with the language, there are going to be legal terms talked about that you probably won't understand with, you know, sort of school level foreign languages. So find yourself a good bilingual solicitor, or a gestoria over here as well you can use to help you with paperwork and getting registered for healthcare and the like. But if this is ultimately, this kind of life is your dream, my advice would be go for it. Absolutely go for it. I've never felt so well in mind or body. It's exceeded any expectations that I had, and it's been an amazing journey. So here's to the next 2 years. I'm sure it's going to be another more adventurous than the first 2 years. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch up with you all soon. Bye.